speak first. Awesome. So welcome to today's Modern Sales Pros DE&I event. We're going to be talking about the AAPI experience in revenue today. As you can tell, this is a meeting, so we can see everyone. If you want, please do introduce yourself in the chat, who you are, where you're located, what you do, and what your favorite traditional home-cooked meal is, so that, you know, we might have some of the same ones. And we have some amazing panelists here today. Just while we wait for folks to sign on, I'm going to ask our panelists just to, you know, do a little icebreaker so you can get to know them a little bit better, even though you will throughout this event. But same question to you all. What is your favorite home-cooked traditional meal? And why don't we start with Tim?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim, and my favorite home-cooked meal has to be dumplings. I'm Chinese, and it's just so much fun to get together as a family and make dumplings together and just make a whole day out of it. So those are some of my very cherished childhood memories.
Amazing. What about you, Kevin?
Hi, I'm Kevin, and I am Vietnamese. So my favorite foods at home, it's a tie between pho and this other clay pot catfish dish called gà kho, and no one makes it better than my mom, obviously.
We'll send that clip to her after this too. What about you, Lily?
Hey everyone, my name's Lily. So I'm Korean, and my favorite home cooked meal has to be my mom's 갈비찜, which is slow cooked braised meat, and she cooks it on low heat for hours and hours, so it just kind of melts in your mouth. So that one has to be my favorite.
Amazing. Thank you. And I would have to say, Tim, I am piggybacking off of yours. I love my mom's dumplings so much. She always tries to teach me, you know, with the rolling technique. Mine are super ugly. I can't get it down, but maybe one day. All right. Well, I think that we got a great group here today, so let's get started. So first off, again, everyone, welcome. And thank you so much for joining today's DE&I event focused on AAPI and revenue. Today, we're going to be sitting down with some amazing revenue leaders to talk about what it's like to be Asian American in the revenue community, how to advocate for yourself in the workplace, and how to create inclusive workplaces and environments. The Modern Sales Pros Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is working super hard to bring you events and content around particular DE&I related topics every month. So if you've attended one before, it's nice to have you back. And if this is your first one, welcome. We're super excited to have you. If you want to learn more about what we're doing at MSP related to DE&I, just dropped in the chat there are resources for revenue leaders. If you have anything to add to that, feel free to send us a message and we'd be happy to put it on there. All right, this happened before too. So if you don't know what Modern Sales Pros is, we're the world's largest community of revenue leaders. So people managers in the sales space. We help leaders answer questions that they'd otherwise struggle to solve on their own. And if you're watching this and think that you want to be a part of MSP, please do apply on our website. You can go to the DE&I committee website and find how to apply right from there. Much of the content that we bring at MSP is possible through our sponsorships. So many of our amazing sponsors include Chorus and SalesLoft, who are sponsoring today's event, and they sponsor many throughout the year. So thank you to these orgs for helping us achieve our goals of being a more inclusive community. Also, a huge thank you. This event wouldn't be possible without the guidance and help of these two organizations. So first off, the Society of Asians in Sales and Success, or SAS. All the speakers today are members of SAS, and Sassy Sales Leadership. Matt Cameron, who is the founder of Sassy Sales Leadership, is a big MSP contributor and member. So we're so happy that he could also contribute in this way. And big shout out to Linda here, who started SAS, for helping us put on this event and get us these amazing speakers. So before we dive into today's session, some really light housekeeping notes. Again, this is a live session, so please do use the chat panel. And if you just came in, tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, where you are, what you do, and your favorite traditional home cooked meal, so we can get to know each other a little bit better. And you can also post your questions in this chat throughout our conversation. We'll also have some time at the end for a live Q&A. So if you want to save it for that, go for it. So another thing is that the session is recorded. We'll be sending it to you all, the attendees, after we conclude today. And if you have any questions for the MSP DE&I committee or our wonderful panelists, or just want to know what else we're doing with DE&I for revenue leaders, go for that. Go for our DE&I resources page, and we have, I'm going to put it here again, and we have a way that you can contact us there. Okay, so let's dive into the agenda. So we're going to spend some time right now talking about the experiences of Asian American folks in the revenue space for about 25 minutes. So how to advocate for yourself, uplifting your AAPI peers, and creative inclusive workspaces. Then we'll get into a group discussion. So we would love to hear from you all too and your experiences. And then we'll do a call to action and closing. So we'll end about 45 minutes after the hour, and then you can go on with all your meetings and emails. Okay, so these are our lovely speakers today. We're so lucky to be joined by all of them. I'm going to give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. So let's start with you, Lily. Go ahead and tell us about yourself and some background.
Yeah, well, nice to meet everybody. My name is Lilly Yoon. Really excited to be a part of this, and thanks so much to everybody who put this together. So a little bit about me. I'm head of growth at Gradient Works. We're a seed-funded startup, so very early stages, but having a good time. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, and I have a thing for startups, honestly. So I've been a part of 3 startups so far. So just enjoying the ride of building things from the ground up. Oh, I'm also a first generation Korean American. So really excited to talk a little bit more about my experience as a revenue leader in the tech space.
Awesome, Lily. We're so excited to have you. Tim, why don't you go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tim. I work at ZoomInfo, and I'm part of the go-to-market systems team, so overseeing all of our technology that powers our business, things like Salesforce, Outreach, HighSpa, a lot of tools. And for me, I am Chinese. My parents came and established themselves in the US in the 80s, so that makes me second generation as far as going to college in the US and navigating the various world that is tech here. So yeah, that's a quick introduction for me. And I'm based in Seattle.
Thanks, Tim. And Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I am a senior manager at Greenhouse, the hiring software, and I am in the customer success function. So for me, I have worked in consulting at Deloitte. I've been at Greenhouse for 5 years. I also teach interpersonal dynamics outside of work. So I think my story has always been about unpacking and unlearning some of my family values, some of the societal values, in order to understand how to best show up for myself and my team in the workplace. So yeah, that's what I'm excited to talk about here today. And I'm also first generation Vietnamese.
It's awesome to have you here, Kevin. I'm excited to learn from you. And I'm Gina Hawley. I'm the community manager at Modern Sales Pros. I'm just going to be moderating this panel and making sure that the trains run on time. This panel is especially important to me because I guess I'm half first generation Asian. My mom is from Taiwan, and I grew up going to Chinese school and spending summers in Taiwan, lived in China for a while. So bringing more diversity, especially Asian Americans, into revenue is something that I care about. So excited to be here and moderate this combo. So I'm going to turn off the slides now so that we can see each other while we get into our conversation. The first thing that we're going to be talking about, just to get all of us warmed up, is the Asian American experience in revenue. So this is going to be a bit of personal stories from each of our panelists, but I would love for each of you to tell us, everyone here, about your journey into sales. So Tim, why don't we start with you?
Yeah. So I started off my career at Accenture as a tech consultant. And from there, I made my way to HighSpot. If any of you are familiar with it, it is a sales enablement platform. And I was one of the early employees there. I was employee number 15, second go-to-market hire. So had an absolute adventure scaling the company from 15 to 600 plus. And while I was there, I got to be very involved with a lot of the go-to-market strategy and how we established the business that was HighSpot. And that was a complete adventure. I will say part of that was also that I was often the only person of color in the room as I was navigating a lot of those conversations and the growth of the company. And so that's something that I had thought a lot about. And then the way that I had made my way to ZoomInfo is that at HighSpot, in 2017, I did the implementation for Discover.org, which is the company that then acquired ZoomInfo in 2019. And so then in 2020, I did another HighSpot implementation for ZoomInfo. And I was able to connect with the VP of Revenue Operations there, who was very impressed by how I did the implementation and told me, Tim, if you ever decide to leave HighSpot, you let me know. And at the beginning of this year, I had decided that 5.5 years at HighSpot was a good run, and I was looking for something else. And I really like to reconnect with the VP of Revenue Operations here at ZoomInfo. And a week later, he had a job lined up for me. So I tell all that to say I never really had planned to end up in revenue and a team like this. I've really just followed a lot of the opportunities that have come with my career, and often I have thought about it as, wow, that looks like an interesting area to learn. I want to go try it out. And I will say, like, I've known quite a bit about Salesforce and various other go-to-market systems over the years, but I never thought I would be joining the leadership of a revenue operations team and all that, and really having to be one of the people in charge of the technology that powers our business. So I think there's probably a mixture of luck and also looking for opportunities as I found my way into my current role. I've also been, I would say, very well supported by a lot of different people along my career journey. And something that I've been thinking a lot about this past year is how it's very encouraging to see that there's more and more representation, diversity in teams like ours. I've really seen that increase over the last year versus if you had talked to me a year ago or before that, I would have looked around and not really seen a lot of people who look like me in these sorts of teams. So it's been very encouraging to see this, and I'm excited for our chat today to dive deeper.
Thanks so much, Tim. Lily, what about you?
Yeah, so similar to Tim, I didn't think I was ever going to go into sales. So I actually taught English in Japan for a year after graduating. I moved back in with my parents for a little bit, and my mom had done sales all her life. And so she was like, I really think you should give sales a try. I think you can do a good job, but you just have to give it a shot. And so that's what her motivation and her encouragement really got me to give sales an opportunity. And so got into my first corporate sales role, found out corporate sales was interesting and learned a lot from it. But I also wanted to try the early stage startup world and build something together with other people from the ground up. And so ended up moving back to Austin from Dallas and really enjoyed getting into the whole sales aspect and, going into multiple sales organizations and being able to go and sell different technology was really interesting for me. So I'm currently at my fourth startup and doing, I think it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. I started at a Series B startup, then I went to a Series A, then I went to another Series A, and then I'm now at a seed funded company. So
you're addicted to the grind.
I am. But yeah, similar to Tim, like I think I think joined my first startup back in 2013. And that's when the Austin startup scene was actually starting to grow. And it was very, very rare to see like other Asian Americans in a startup sales role. So it has definitely grown over the past few years because I think communities like this have really paved a way for people to find how to increase their diversity, which is awesome to see.
Definitely. I'm sure that your mom served as a really good mentor for you too, because back when she was doing sales, it was even more or less diverse.
Yeah.
And Kevin, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, this is purely background how I got into where I am today. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, first question, I'm doing great. So I have only been at 2 companies in my life. Deloitte, consulted for 2 years, flew around and got really tired of flying across the country. And then Greenhouse. So I've been here for almost 5 years. And customer success was the most logical step for me because it allowed me to be a consultant, to make impact and work with a bunch of customers. But I think like how I've got here has been so much about self-reflection and understanding my limitations, what are the beliefs that are not true that can be put on to AAPI people, and unlearning those and wanting to be able to improve myself and give back to the people that I work with, which is why I love being a manager today. So, there wasn't a lot of Asian people in my previous role and teams at Deloitte. I think there's still a lot of work to be done at Greenhouse, but yeah, I also love ERG work. We just started our first ERG called Jade House. So it's all good stuff.
Awesome. As you can see, we have some super smart and accomplished people on our panel today. And you overcame by not being part of the majority in the space that you're going into for work. So I'm sure that you've encountered a bunch of challenges. Tim, what challenges have you experienced being Asian American in revenue?
Yeah, I'll start off with, I think growing up in Seattle, and sort of in the business circles here, it wasn't uncommon for me to be the only person of color in the room. I sort of just got used to it. And I was reflecting on all of that. I had realized throughout my career, as I was getting established with various things in the B2B space and SaaS and all that, I had realized how much I had tried very hard to like be towards what I had seen others being, as far as well, I'll just call out like the white people that I was often in the rooms with, and trying to be like them, like reading the books that they read and trying to understand how does one navigate the career in this space. And I will say 2020, many things happened in 2020, but for me, when at the start of the pandemic, I found myself with a lot of time. And so what I did is I decided to dive in and just reflect on my Asian American identity. So I spent a lot of time reading different books by different Asian Americans and reflecting on that. And then with Linda starting SaaS and getting plugged into this group, I had really realized for myself, wow, I had been missing out trying to be someone else, or being someone who I thought others wanted me to be. And so I spent a lot of the past year reflecting on myself and how I show up not only at work, but in my life, and trying to be my authentic self that is this Chinese American. And very on the American side, I think I'm not as Chinese as maybe some of my cousins who had moved to the country in middle school or something like that. And so for me, one of the big challenges, how do I authentically bring myself to work and bring myself completely to work and with all the people around me? and also help others as bring themselves authentically to work, especially the teams that I lead, the people that I hire. And so that's something that I thought about a lot, is like your past experiences definitely have shaped you and impact who you bring, the person you show up to with all your coworkers and who you are at the company. And so I thought a lot around, how do I help others on their journey of bringing their full identity into the workplace?
Amazing. Kevin, what do you have to add to that about challenges?
I would say there's been challenges like stereotypes that I've encountered, such as you don't emote enough, or you don't have leadership presence, and we think you're a better profile for this kind of skill set process work or something like that. And I think these things were really hard for me to grapple with, because in my career, I would want to trust my advisors and my mentors, but also balance, like, questioning the truth of that and knowing what I am capable of. So I think that my challenge in revenue has always been similar to what Tim mentioned. How can I know my inherent worth, my values, and to model those with my team members and my leadership, of which things can be very like counter to how I was raised in my family, which is to not to make much noise and to be respectful of the superiors. So for me, it's been a lot of, again, like trying to bring in authenticity and to use my voice and to make my base really strong and grounded, so that I can move up, so that I can help the people around me.
That's really important. And with these challenges, sometimes you're left to, if you don't have an awesome manager or people around you to advocate for you, you have to advocate for yourself. So Lilly, do you have any examples of when you've had to advocate for yourself and stories around that?
Yeah, so I resonate a lot with what Kevin said, because for me, I grew up similarly, where parents are like, you don't talk back to your elders, you don't like disagree. They're older than you, so they know more, which it took a lot to work on to get myself out of that mindset in a work environment. And what really happened for me to make the switch was when I wanted to be a manager in an SDR team, and there was an open position, and there are 3 other candidates for that role internally. And I put in so much work, and I was like, all right, I could probably get this role if I just do X, Y, and Z, and I ended up not getting the role. And I ended up asking my leadership team around things that I could have done differently. And the feedback, the challenge that I got, and it was really helpful because they actually helped me and coached me through that, was around just like floor presence. They're like, hey, you are so good with numbers. You're good at reporting. You're good at showing the data and like telling people and showing them and coaching them what they need to do. But you just don't have that floor presence that we need, that we would typically see in a leader. And so, it made me pretty upset the first time I heard it, because I was like, what does that mean exactly? Is it because I'm not the loudest voice in the room on the sales team? But in reality, they're just like, you're just not communicating yourself in a certain way, or not communicating in a group environment with other leaders, or like voicing your opinions. And so they actually, after that conversation, several other conversations, really provided opportunities for me to learn and actually voice my opinions. And I think that was also a learning point for my leadership team, where they were like, hey, like, we should actually take a moment to think about, how do we make sure we're being inclusive of everybody in a group conversation, and take a moment to say like, hey, Lily, you haven't said anything yet. Is there anything that you want to communicate? And so it was a win-win situation for both as well. And I ended up getting the next open position.
Yeah. And Tim, I know that you have a really awesome point to make for advocating for yourself as well.
Yeah, I'll share that something that I've really had to work on, a skill that I've really had to work on, and I feel grateful to have connected with a lot of people about, is this whole notion of self-advocacy. It's not something that came natural to me, especially as someone with an Asian American upbringing. I always thought that it would be arrogant if I was sort of being outspoken about myself and my contributions to the company. And as I learned, as I was observing a lot of my colleagues who were raised in different backgrounds, I realized that, wow, this is actually like, they're much better at it than I am. And even though like we might be contributing very similar impact to the company, they are much better than me at like making sure they are managing up well and making sure that their leadership really understands all the contributions that they make. And so for me, it's something that I've really worked on in the past few years for myself, is this whole, how do I make sure that I am in like a fair way letting my leadership know about the contributions that I make and the impact that I'm having on the company. And I've also had a number of wonderful conversations with other Asian Americans about it's something that they've really struggled with too, based on their upbringings. And so I'm glad at a minimum, like these conversations are starting to happen and people are starting to talk about it. People are at least aware that this is a challenge that they have faced. And so for me, I just want to share, I've been on a big journey for myself as far as self-advocacy goes, and have really enjoyed that I get to walk with others on their journeys too.
Thank you, Tim. And I know we are having such an amazing discussion, but we've got to move on to, we want to get this in there, how to build a supportive culture for your team as a manager. And Kevin, if you also want to talk about what communities or resources that you want to let these people know about so that they can be better themselves.
Yeah, I would love to. So I think just to follow the thread on advocacy, I think a really important tool that has helped me in my life is NVC. So Nonviolent Communication is a book taught by a guy named Marshall Rosenberg. I think he was around since 1980 or something like that. And it basically gives you a 4-step framework on how to express yourself honestly or to listen generously or empathetically. And that has been so helpful to advocate for myself and to communicate in a very specific way, to listen to people, to give them specific and rewarding feedback and things like that. And so this practice and learning is forever. I've been practicing it for like 2 or 3 years now. And that in itself has really helped me. It's enabled me to bring everything that I want to life, whether that's asking for the budget to create a new ERG for Jade House at Greenhouse, whether it is to advocate for myself for my promotion to being a manager and giving explicit feedback on the gaps that I saw in the process, or it's literally to just get more connected with people. And I think like these interpersonal skills are so valuable because, you know, we're in a people, we work with people. And so in terms of resources, like I would say NVC was one of the most valuable things for me. There's a great book out there called The Wake Up by Michelle Mi-Jung Kim. And it talks about how to match your intent with the impact that you want to make. And then in terms of like community, I think that's where it's kind of complicated with the API community from my own experience. I haven't seen a group like SAS until Linda created it with a bunch of other people this year. But before then, there wasn't really much there. And I think because like being Asian is not like being part of a monolith, like there's so many complexities to the culture and how people can want to get together with each other to support each other. So I think that like the lack of community and the complexity behind it feeds into the challenges of my own experience. Like I didn't really have anyone to lean into. So I worked, how my journey has been more about self-work, learning, and using those tools to make the things that I want a reality. I'm gonna pause there. I can go into like my team culture and things like that, but I wonder if like anyone else on the panel had anything to say.
Yeah, I'd say having like open discussions and, you know, if you have a diverse team, like embracing the diversity that you have and having open communications with each other. I know there's a lot of things that have happened in the last 2 years, just a lot of movements going on. And yeah, I think I've seen a lot of organizations and teams do a great job of actually addressing it together instead of just being like, hey, the outside world doesn't exist and it's just like work like always. So I've seen a lot of positive change and being able to have open communication, and I think continuing that is something that revenue leaders should really focus on moving forward too.
I'll just add something that I have really tried to do myself is when I start a new company or when I have a new hire join, I really want it to be a two-way street for us to get to know each other, where they can learn some about my background and sort of how my experience has been. And I also equally want to learn about theirs. So that's something that I've really tried to do on sort of a more like day-to-day, maybe tactical level, one-to-one, as far as helping build that support within our teams.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Like something that I do with my new team members is a user manual exercise. Has anyone here heard of like user manual? Okay, yeah, you got a user manual for, I don't know, a Nintendo or a game Switch, but then what about a user manual for humans? So I script out some like questions to understand them on a personal and professional level, and so that we can understand our working styles and how to best collaborate with each other. And I think from there, like it really opens the door for a foundation of trust and understanding. So yeah, like I think that's one of the tools that I use. And I think in terms of modeling what a supportive culture looks like, I think this is one of the coolest parts of being a leader, which is my values can influence the shared culture of the team. So for me, that is vulnerability, compassion, ownership. And I just try to figure out like, what is the balance of disclosing when vulnerable moments versus like listening to them and asking them to show up. And I think that can be facilitated on a one-on-one level before it becomes more safe in a group environment. So I think I just try to I try to win people over in the one-on-ones, and then that naturally makes it easier for me to create that supportive culture in the group dynamic.
Amazing. Well, I would love to open up this discussion to the rest of our audience. If anyone has a question for our amazing panelists and want to unmute yourself and ask it, feel free to do so. I can't necessarily see you if you're raising your hand, so go for it and ask away.
I have a question if no one wants to ask anything. This is more, I guess, advice that I'm kind of searching from all of you, but just not an Asian person, but a person of color. You talked about kind of being the only person of color in the room, and I definitely know how that feels. How do you kind of have conversations with your colleagues, especially the ones that you get along with really well, and kind of ask for their support and their allyship? Because that's something I've really struggled with, is like, okay, I mean, even if this person's not Black, maybe they're another person of color, or it's a white person and we really get along. I've gone so much further when I've been able to like finally break through with that person and kind of have them be my ally and even be able to like vent about a frustrating situation. How has that gone for all of you, and how do you kind of create those relationships?
I'm going to let the panelists jump in.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So back at HighSpot, I remember with how crazy of a year 2020 was and everything with BLM, I actually had a number of really good one-on-ones and chats with some of my Black coworkers. And I think there's a lot to be said around allyship. I certainly learned a lot about allyship in 2020. And I'm going to tie back to what Kevin was saying earlier about the one-on-ones. I think that's really one of the most powerful ways to connect with people, or even just like a small group. I remember when we were talking through some of the DE&I things at HighSpot and how we wanted to improve, some of the best conversations were the ones that happened within small groups or with one-on-ones. And I think that's where we get to know each other. That's where we can best support each other. And then I think that's then the foundation, going back to the trust part talked about earlier, where then and the broader things like if there's a new initiative at the company, or if there are bigger things that are where people could use support, then like you're there for them, and you're helping support each other through there. So I think like you build community in the small groups and the one-on-ones, and that provides your foundation of support for larger things. Like if there's going to be a ERG that gets spun up or anything like that, that like you've built a lot of these relationships and connections to have support. And I think it goes both ways. I think that I look for support in the same way that I try to extend support.
Love that. Thank you.
Taylor, could I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
So this is you trying to ask, like garner more allyship from your close colleagues, right?
For all of us, I guess. I'm curious if that's something that you've done yourself, how you garner allyship. Maybe I can steal that and also be an ally as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with like disclosure, and that's always kind of like the scary thing, right? Like, how much skin in the game are you willing to put? And I think it also takes time to build trust that these things may not be just like a checklist because it's a themed month, a Black History Month or Heritage Month. So yeah, I think it really just takes like building the relationship with these people, and then sharing current events and trying to see who reciprocates. Because in the past, like I have found myself almost kind of like smothering or word vomiting to people because I wanted support, and sometimes I was left hanging. And so I think you got to kind of like tease it out to see like who actually reciprocates and actually digs more when you share things. And also there's another complexity to this, where some people may not even know how to receive the things that you share. So I think like it does take a certain level of endurance to be able to determine how much you're willing to share before you might have a vulnerability hangover because you share too much. So it's like kind of like checking in first and being like, how much am I willing to share, and who do I think would be the best allies to start with, and then yeah, like hopefully your boss. So yeah,
That's so helpful. Thank you.
I have a question about mentorship. So I spent 15 years on Wall Street before I became an enterprise AE. I'm at Set Sail now. And pretty much everywhere I've worked, I've not just been like the only Asian, but the only minority, and usually the only woman who's producing. So, now I'm in some groups like Pavilion and Women in Revenue, where I'm being offered formal mentorship. And I guess, honestly, like, I'm not sure, they seem to have like two tracks, like one for, POC and one, regular vanilla flavor. So I don't necessarily want to be a sales manager. I've done that before. I love working with customers, but I want to be the best AE I can. So like, have y'all had mentors? If you had a choice, would you go through the regular, or would you choose the spicy Asian flavor?
What are you doing?
Yeah, I guess I can go. So through my different roles, I'm similar to you, Lisa. Like, I was the only Asian American female on the sales team in multiple sales groups. So, and most of the management team were white males. But I was very fortunate where I had allies in the leadership team where they are still my mentors to this day. And so I still reach out to them. We're all at different companies now, and they provide great feedback. There was a point in my career where I did want a female mentor, and it wasn't something where I could, easily find like an Asian American female mentor in new business sales. But I had a lot of great connections. My current managers at the time introduced me to several other females and amazing experience. And so I think learning and communicating with other female leaders has been beneficial in its own way, and being able to understand like, how am I presenting myself as a leader within the organization, and making sure I have a spot at the table with all the other male leaders in the group. So I'd say both. If you can find as many mentors that will mentor you, go for it, that you respect. Yeah.
May I say something? So I was going through something similar with like, what type of mentor do I want? And I started meeting with someone who gave me some really amazing insight that it's just like, one friend can't be everything for you. One mentor probably can't be everything for you as well. So very much like Lily said, this person I've been working with like gave me a framework for the different types of mentors you should have. And then there's like an area of this where if you're trying to expand your like thinking and stuff, where it's specifically like not just your focus area, but like background. So they're bringing different perspective into your mentorship board, and it's like building your own personal board of directors so that you can have both. And that's like really important, is because those people are going to have different perspectives. I'm working on finding the link, and I'll share that when I can find it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you. And also, I just want to mention one thing that I think that Asian Americans can lean into. And I don't want to stereotype, but we tend to be pretty decent academically. And there's a Stanford continuing studies class called Business 105. And it's an evening class. It's offered twice a year, and it's remote now because of COVID, and it's 6 weeks. And you can take it for a grade and compete for a class prize. And Lily, in 2019, both semester, the class prizes, which is a pitch contest voted by the 50 people in the class who are working professionals in SaaS, two Asian girls from UT Austin won the prize 2 semesters.
Oh, so, awesome. Look at
It's taught by Chuck DeVita, and it's for people who are already working in enterprise SaaS sales and marketing. And you get to meet, like the CEO of Coupa and the CEO of Exactly, and there's an academic lecture, and I really recommend the class, but I'll drop a link in the chat.
Nice, awesome.
I'll add on to that a little bit as far as how I look at that is this broader notion of how do I best learn and grow. I think mentorship is definitely one core component of that, especially a one-on-one mentorship. And I'm very grateful for communities like SaaS, where I've been able to connect with other mentors. I also look at it as I'm big into podcasts. One of my favorite podcasts as of late has been Across the Lines. I just dropped the link into the chat. And it's a podcast focused on the Asian American experience, especially in the workplace. And that's been very helpful for me, just to get a look into how some other Asian Americans think, especially some who have been very successful in their careers. And so for me, I look at it as mentors. I definitely really like the board of directors concept for yourself. And then any learnings that I can have as far as podcasts or classes like Lisa said. And then finally, peers. I'm always grateful for peers who I can connect with and swap experiences with. I think having that very holistic surrounding of how you can foster your own growth and development is something that I try to do for myself, so that I'm essentially like diversified in all the support that I have as I grow.
Can I pop in? All right, so my angle is a little bit more on the traditional like career coach or life coach, therapist kind of route. I think there's so much value there as well in understanding the self better, and through that, like having my own North Stars of how I want to make my decisions. And so like that in combination with like mentors at work and podcasts has been super helpful for me as well.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who asked the question. If you do have another question that you'd like answered, join SaaS. If you're looking for a mentor, join SaaS, ask for a mentor there. But before we conclude, Thank you again to our amazing panelists today for giving us your insight. I would love if you could all just give us one key takeaway from this conversation that you got. If you want to leave our audience with something to ponder for the rest of the day, maybe some tactical advice that they can bring back to their teams tomorrow, what would that be? And let's go Tim, Lily, and then we'll end with Kevin.
All right. For me, it's lead with empathy. It's one of our core values here at our whole team under the CIO at ZoomInfo. And I think that goes both ways, empathy for others that I can extend, as well as the knowing that others will be extending empathy towards me. So I think that's the foundation by which a lot of other things happen.
Awesome. Yeah. So for me, I'd say, working closely with your recruiters to, increase the diversity within your group and organization really helps a lot. And sometimes it's kind of reevaluating your job description. I did that exercise with my previous recruiter, and it was a fun thing where we were like, how do we make this more open to everybody and not just the tech people in the world that are already in tech sales, and so that could be really helpful. And yeah, I had a very candid conversation with a female Asian American one time, and she was just like, I don't know how you do tech sales, Lily. I just don't think it's something for, I think it's mostly for white males. And so being able to have candid conversations of like, it's not just for white men, it's for anybody who really wants to, learn and grow their sales skills. And just having those conversations and letting people know that you can be a part of that and be a part of the change and building more diversity within those organizations.
Yeah, +1 to hiring. Mine would be really proactive in supporting your API folks with self-advocacy. Be proactive in helping them develop these skills if you sense there's a pattern with them not celebrating themselves enough. And so celebrating the wins and the opportunities really specifically, and then taking the time to coach them on how to tell their narratives, especially for API folks. So that'd be mine.
Thank you all so much for your time today. Before we go, little CTA here. I mean, first way that you can get started is by joining a community of API folks in revenue. So we're lucky to have Linda here today. I'm sure a lot of you know her, but Linda, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your organization and how people can join?
Yeah, sure. Well, Gina, if you don't mind sharing the link to our meetup group and to our Slack group in the chat, that would be great. But if you've not already joined, that's how we all found each other for the speakers on the panel today. And I think, when I first started my career in tech sales, I thought I was one of very few people, but actually there's a lot of us. So I think the community is almost at 1,000 people. That's organically grown over the last year. So there's a lot of people there for you to meet, whether it's just asking a one-off ad hoc question in Slack, or whether you want to actually get more involved and find a mentor. We have an annual mentorship matchup program that we do, or whether you just want to listen to great monthly events and learn that way. So whatever floats your boat for the style that you'd like to be a part of the community, you can find something there. So encourage you to take the 2 seconds to join, and if you're here, it's because you're looking for that community. So just encourage you to take that one step further. But yeah, we'd love to welcome you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for your time today. Again, I'll send you the recording with some key takeaways right after this. And with that, have a nice rest of your day, and I'm sure I'll see you all soon. Bye, y'all.